Being Black in America comes with its challenges. However, we understand that enlightenment through education is the oppressor's worst fear. By bridging the gap between academia and the people, our purpose is to equip you with knowledge that breaks down barriers during your journey towards truth and freedom. Welcome to the Black and Highly Dangerous Podcast.
Yo, Daph, what's up? What's up? How's your week been? Things going?
Oh my goodness. I am happy to say that I have officially finished teaching my very first course as the instructor of record. I won't say I did it by myself because I had an awesome teaching fellow who co-taught the course with me. But, you know, my name was listed in the course description and I finished it. I'm really proud.
Hey, that's what's up. That's what's up. That's good. That's good. First semester done, many more to go. But I know that first one is always, you know, a learning experience, getting used to it, getting your feet wet a little bit. And then after that, it becomes smoother every semester. You continue to do it. So that's good. That's good to get that weight off your shoulders, head into summer. With that accomplished, getting the postdoc accomplished, you know, getting vaccines, it's looking like to be a very good summer for you.
Although I will say, like, you know, you think that things are going to slow down a bit, but I think in helping students like go into finals week and like prep, like this last week was like busier than ever. So it's like, I don't know if things will slow down before I like actually turn in grades, but I'm still happy.
Yeah, almost there. A few more days till freedom.
Yeah,
that's good.
I know it was your last week too, right?
Yeah, last week of classes, past week. So got all three of my classes, their final papers. So been on a grading frenzy, like a grading retreat this past few days, trying to have everything done by Tuesday and start tallying up these final grades and give it to them this week. So I'll be done. Well, I have one more kind of final on the 11th, but I just give them their final grades that day. So this is like my real kind of last week of doing work. And then, you know, transition into summer break. I'll get my second vaccine this week on a Monday. So I'll let you all know how that goes next week. after a couple of days. Kristen got her second shot last week, and she was actually fine.
Yeah. Which one did y'all get again?
I got Pfizer, and I got Moderna, and she got Pfizer.
Okay. You know what? Everyone that I know that got Pfizer really didn't feel anything. Even my mom. They were just like, cool. She was like, oh, my arm hurt. That's about it.
Yeah, same thing with my parents. Yeah. So I got the Moderna, so we already heard Daph's story. So hopefully I'll be okay. But we'll see. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Let's see.
So I'll get that tomorrow. But yeah, other than that, just counting down these days, waiting for the semester to end. Same old. Looking forward to the summer break for sure. Getting some good R&R, hopefully, to take advantage of that. And I'm still waiting to hear my tenure decision. Good news is that I've pretty much made it all the way up the chain, and the Central Committee also approved me for tenure. So now it goes to the president's office, and that's the last step. So hopefully in these next couple of weeks, I get the official word, and it'll be time to celebrate.
Okay, come on, President.
Come on, President, the Provost office.
Yeah. But it's like usually very rare that they would like overturn, you know, at the department and then school. You get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, it's rare. So I would say, you know, I wouldn't be fearful to say that I'm very confident at this point. But, you know, wait till we get to that final paperwork, and then we'll know for sure and it become formal. So looking forward to that. And now, again, that'll be a nice transition to the summer as well. A lot of good news at the end of this year. Well, not the end of this year, but I guess the end of the academic year for us PhD hosts. So things coming to fruition. All right. So let's get into some. Oh, I got to ask you, any plans for Mother's Day coming up?
Yes, I am actually going to go to Tennessee to see my mom,
Nice,
and my sister and my very, very best friend who we had on the podcast is about to be a mother. So I'm going
nice,
to also treat her to brunch. And
nice.
this will be my first time home in more than a year.
Oh
So
wow, oh
really
wow.
exciting.
That's a good time to be home then. Good time to be
Yeah.
home. Celebrate that. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be Kristen's first Mother's Day. So
Oh,
um
yeah.
get her a couple gifts and wine and dine her, treat her right. But I won't say it on air now because I don't want to spoil the surprise. But so I'm looking forward to that. Celebrating her first year as a mama and holding it down. That's always special, the first one. So um, yeah, be my first time as a dad doing something like this because usually, I just give stuff to my mom, which I probably
Mhm.
still will do. Me and my brothers, we always get her a gift, but now now it's a little different when you got your own little one.
Yeah.
Celebrate a little differently.
Yeah, you got to show that appreciation
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
also see firsthand like what
Mm-hmm.
goes into taking care of a baby.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure they
Mm-hmm.
need to.
You definitely do. It is not a game. It is not a game. So I'm looking forward to celebrating her first Mother's Day too.
Yeah.
And I will, I guess, after O Lord News, we'll talk about today's guest, which has a strong relation connection to Mother's Day in that theme.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but all right, let's get into some O Lord News, and then we will introduce today's guest afterwards. Hello, and welcome to BHD News, where we give you the most current and eye-opening O Lord News of the week. Join us as we present news that'll make you want to say,
Okay, I don't know if you guys are tired of hearing about paycheck protection scammers, but I had to tell you about this latest one. Of course, they are a family from Florida. Somehow, Florida gets the reputation of being, oh Lord, newsworthy. But they were the head of a family run ministry, in quotes, and they applied for, I think, $6 million in paycheck protection loans, but the bank actually gave them like 8.4 million.
wow.
Yes. And so after they got the money, it was a mom, dad, a son, and a daughter. They kept like transferring the money into different accounts, trying to like hide it.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, I guess they heard that investigators have been interviewing neighbors.
Oh.
And what about they did like escape to Canada
Oh my God.
and somehow got money out of like Canada, like getting the COVID-19. Somehow they got money from there, and now Canada is actually investigating them too.
Yo, you got two countries coming for y'all, and y'all are in big trouble.
Yes. It's just so crazy. Y'all, I mean, the deadline for the paycheck protection loans are coming up.
Mhm.
It's funny because given that I do have LLCs and stuff like that, people have asked me, are you going to? I'm like, look, I tell these stories on Oh Lord News. I don't want to be one of these stories on Oh Lord News. I'm good.
I don't want to come out here talking about y'all that Daph is on the run, doing some fraud. No, that's crazy. When people learn, one, they ran from the U.S. and then they're gonna do the same thing in Canada. So they clearly did not learn a lesson, and deserve to get caught 100%. Trying to do a second fraud scheme in another country, thinking that people are, these feds gonna track their money, man, wherever
They
that
really
goes.
are. They really are. It's funny because I actually saw somebody create a GoFundMe to try to pay back their paycheck protection loan.
Oh nah, see,
No.
that's not what GoFundMe's for.
No.
You pay your own damages.
Okay. Well, I have two quick stories about your state, New Jersey. Okay. So, a New Jersey high school teacher has been removed from the classroom because for whatever reason, he thought it was a good idea to go on a racist, uh, vulgarity-filled rant about George Floyd.
Wow.
Yeah, so, he started a conversation on Zoom about climate change, and it quickly went to him saying things like, if you think I'm privileged, then F you, but he says the word, because my daughter thinks I'm privileged and I don't speak to her. And then he goes on to say, I hear people whining and crying about Black Lives Matter, but George Floyd was an effing criminal and he got arrested and he got killed because he wouldn't comply. And the bottom line is we make him an effing hero.
Oh my Lord.
And he just went on and on and on. And of course, he has been removed from the classroom. If you see the picture, not only is he saying F you, but he's holding up the birds too.
Oh my goodness. What is my wife so angry? What grade was this? Did they say what did he teach?
No, they just said high school. I'm guessing since he's talking about climate change, he could be.
I was just fearful that it was like elementary school or something like that. He's wilding like that. High schoolers they can handle a little better. Like a 6 or 7 year old able to, which would be wild. Did they say where at in the state? Curious.
No, I do know he's an adjunct at Hudson County Community College and New Jersey City University.
Okay, so. Jersey City. All right.
So yeah, Jersey City. Yeah.
All right. Well,
crazy.
People wild.
Yeah. Well, he ain't the only one, the only civil servant wilding out, because a New Jersey police officer has recently been demoted. I don't know why he hasn't been fired, but has recently been demoted for offering a cop a promotion in exchange for sleeping with his wife and underage daughter.
What in the world? That is weird. I don't know. First off, I don't know how you're not fired after some kind of like proposal like that. That is wild.
Yeah. And it's at Vineland Police Department. You know where that is?
I'm not sure where Vineland is, no.
Okay.
I think I've heard of it before.
Yeah. Crazy. Like I would think that is a fireable offense, but I don't know.
Like it just go to show you that no matter what these police officers do, they not trying to turn on their own. Even if they put up ridiculous proposals like that is crazy. I don't even know how people have the audacity to do things like that. Like, I'll give you a promotion if I could sleep with your wife and your daughter. That is wild. I wonder how that exchange went when that person heard it. I'm sure it was not pretty. Not pretty. It's what was interesting is that city officials actually did want to suspend. Well, they wanted to suspend him for 180 days without pay as well as demote him, but that's not what happened. Well, police do be having strong unions too, so maybe that's part of it.
Yeah,
that's still crazy. I got a police story as well. This is in Atlanta police, and the Atlanta police are now launching a new strategy to stop teens from illegally selling water at intersections. And part of this new initiative is issuing citations to the parents rather than the kids, them getting in illegal trouble. So of course, naturally, people are kind of upset about this because it's like, why are you coming after teenagers selling water bottles at intersections or wherever they're at? Now it just kind of gives a new, more power to the police again to kind of harass them under the law. So that's something to keep your eyes on, folks in Atlanta and teenagers, whoever, be careful with this, because now they can come and get you for selling water bottles, which I don't even think is a big deal. I'm sure there's a lot of other things we can use our police force for instead of just looking for folks with water bottles trying to make $1.
I know. And my thing is, why wouldn't the city response be, let's create some type of young entrepreneurship fund to help them become vendors? Like, why does the response have to be a criminal one?
Yeah, right. Let's hold some workshops, community workshops, and say it's free, and we'll teach you how to get the proper licensing and where you can do it. And I'm sure that's educating the public. Yeah, that's a better. But for some reason, we love to make a criminal justice response to everything that doesn't need it. We do not need the police to handle this kind of situation at all. Like you said, I like that education approach.
Yeah. Hopefully people or organizations outside of police departments can mount some type of response, because ultimately youth are doing this because they want to be productive. They want to have some money. There are a million other things that they could be getting into, but they're trying to sell water. I mean, come on.
Well, that's serious. This is another one. This is some things we've had mild conversations about in the past, but I think it's worth mentioning too. Another kind of policing related story, and I seen this on CNN. And back in February 2019, Najee Parks, he walked into a Woodbridge Police Department to clear up a misunderstanding after he received a call from his grandmother telling him that police were looking for him. And Parks had trouble with law in his past, but that was way, way back in the day. Nothing recent. He, according to a police report obtained by CNN, the evidence presented by the police officers that led to Parks' arrest was a high crime comparison from a facial recognition scan of a photo of what was determined to be a fake ID left at a crime scene. The facial recognition match was enough for prosecutors and judges to sign off on his arrest, and he pretty much spent 11 days in jail for a false facial recognition match. And so again, as we are, improving technology in so many ways, there's already, a lot of activists and advocates talking about how facial recognition software is inaccurate due to algorithmic bias and a lot of other things, and is more accurate with pretty much white males more than anything. And so if we begin to rely on these instruments a lot more, then we're going to see a lot more of these injustices happen. So something to, keep our eye on. Sad to see something like that, but this stuff I think is going to happen more and more if we keep using the police keep using things like facial recognition and those kind of cameras.
Yeah, I read about that as well. And what was so sad about it is, one, the judge signed off on it. It took more than a year, or a little over a year, for them to even dismiss the case, despite the fact that he had an airtight alibi. He was at Western Union, I think, 30 minutes or 30 miles away, sending money to his significant other.
Wow.
And even when the charges were dropped, he did not even receive an apology.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Yeah, Western Union is a very good alibi. Because you have the documents, you got to show your IDs, you got all that kind of stuff. You probably got cameras there. So that's actually kind of wild that they didn't even check that alibi, because you would get all kinds of documentation and timestamps of when and stuff he was out there making those transactions. Anything with money, there's always a paper trail. So wow, that's crazy. Well, shame on them, and hopefully he gets some justice. I'm sure some lawyer's gonna look at this and look for some civil settlements for sure. There got to be something there.
I do think that they are going to sue.
Good. Pay that man. And then, I think more cases like this, if police departments have to start giving out a lot of money for these false, identifications, then maybe we'll see some changes too. Or they'll be less reliant on it. Who knows?
And that's crazy, because that was New Jersey too.
Yes, Woodbridge, New Jersey. And that's pretty close to my hometown, about 10, 15 minutes away. I know we just talked about Jersey a couple weeks too with Perth Amboy and the bikes and everything too. So I don't know what's going on with Jersey. I got to be careful out here. Cops wilding.
Yeah.
All right. And then, so another kind of big, oh Lord, news story of this past week has to do with Senator and our vice president. One of the stories that began with this is when Senator Tim Scott was kind of making a response to President Biden's address this past week. And in his response, he very explicitly said that America, the U.S., is not a racist country. Of course, Senator Tim Scott is the senator, a Republican senator, Black Republican senator from South Carolina. And naturally, the Republicans were using him as this instrument to kind of denounce racism. Following this, I think about a day or so later, Vice President Kamala Harris was on Good Morning America, I believe, and she was asked directly by the host about Senator Tim Scott's comments about the U.S. not being racist, and she began pretty much by saying, "I don't think America is a racist country." But we also have to speak the truth about the history of racism in our country and its existence today. So, I mean, that is a very weird thing to say to begin that way, to also say America isn't a racist country, but say we need to talk about the racist history and its existence today, which essentially means America is a racist country. But many people, including myself, were a little disappointed that she didn't, explicitly say that America is a racist country, or even just approach it in a better way by almost repeating verbatim what Tim Scott has said in that situation.
Yeah. It's just really unfortunate because it seems like, at least in Kamala Harris's, or vice president, let me put some respect on her name, Kamala Harris is trying to like toe a line and make sure people still feel a little bit comfortable. And I'm sorry, we just have to call it like it is. And what was crazy is that even after this, I didn't really watch the whole segment, but I saw like a news outline that was like, wokeness will be like the end of like the Democratic Party, or some kind of mess like that. And it's like, there's this pushback towards calling a spade a spade.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Especially after all this wokeness is what won y'all the Senate. It is what got y'all in office. And all of a sudden, you want to betray those roots. Like, who are you pandering to? Because you really need to make sure that the people who got you in office are still feeling you when midterms come around and when it's time for the next person to be elected president. So I just think they need to be very careful about like the language that they're using and who they're pushing back against, because those are the very people that got you in office. If you ask me.
Yeah. And it's weird because even in the address, Biden mentioned, he said white supremacy is like the greatest threat right now, domestic threat in our country. So for him to say that even opens up the door for you to say that racism still exists in this country. Even if the president is acknowledging it and saying, hey, white supremacists are our biggest threat. So it's still like, wow, you really did all you can to kind of play both ends. You made a clear statement saying it's not racist, but then in the context of it afterwards, you're explaining racism. So it's weird. But like you said, and we mentioned this in our clubhouse, we have these kind of conversations in our clubhouse. So anybody who's listening is on Clubhouse, join us. We're the Black Thought Exchange is the name of our club. And we had a good conversation about this in the clubhouse, and folks really trying to, express themselves as far as how we feel about it. And I know one of the things that stood out was how may this impact, even midterm elections coming up and stuff like that. Because again, like Dav said, all of this, movement conversations are what got these folks in office and saved the election, essentially saving the country from someone like Trump. And now when we hear things like this is not a good look, particularly for people of color and Black folk, when you are not really going to bat for us when you have the opportunity to do so. And I notice these kind of things are what sticks to us and we will remember, and it's not going to motivate people to run to the polls and vote for people like you or people you're supporting and stuff like that, endorsing. I don't think this is a good strategy moving forward, either the midterms or the next election. And that's kind of a scary thing because you got to start doing right by us when you get the opportunity.
Yeah. Agreed. I do want to end things. I don't know if you have other stories, but on some more positive
go ahead.
Note. So there's an organization called Moving Nashville Forward that will pilot the city's first guaranteed basic income experiment. They announced the project last month, and they will send out 10 monthly distributions of $1,000 to 100 families starting in November. And it is meant to address poverty while generating data about community well-being. So hopefully more pilots like this will happen. And it's something that we can give our elected officials as a policy solution that can keep people on board.
No, I think that's good. That's really good. Putting money in people's pockets, helping them survive. I'm interested to see, I know folks are going to be studying that and we'll see the results. And these are the kind of things we need when we talk about law and policy in general. We need like these kind of like pilot launches, evidence-based approaches where let's try it out in a few settings, demographics, get the data. And then when we implement things like this, or at least seek to implement things like this on a larger scale, we do it more informed. And that's something our politics are vastly lacking in so many different ways. So I like that. I like that's happening, and we need to see more of that for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's introduce today's guest, who is someone who calls themselves and identifies as a social entrepreneur, which is really cool. I like that. Latoya Gayle, who's here to talk to us about her work in the community, particularly why we said it's related to a Mother's Day coming up, because her organization, one of the organizations she is a part of and leads, is called March Like a Mom, which is really, really fascinating.
Yes. And that organization was founded in the wake of ongoing police violence. We have seen, unfortunately, in a lot of the videos of these extrajudicial police killings, that the victims are often calling out for their mothers. And for Latoya Gayle and her co-organizers, that was kind of a rallying cry. And so they want to march like mothers. But what's amazing about her is that she has always been a parent organizer in Boston, particularly around the issue of education and advocacy for students with special needs. So in addition to talking about March Like a Mother, you'll also hear for parents how you can advocate for your children.
Oh, 100%. That stuff is very important in our community. I know, Daphne, you're in education, so I'm sure you know this and are more aware of it than I am, but I know of conversations, right? Black folks not having either the language to articulate what's going on with their child, or being misdiagnosed with things, or sometimes just not having the resources to help a child in need in various different ways. And so it's really good that we also had that conversation on here too, because that is very much needed. And I think we need to have more. I know folks are doing that, but I would like to hear probably on more national level, broader level too, right? These kind of things, because I think we need to raise awareness for our community in particular of what it means to have a child in need, and also what kind of resources are available to assist parents, because again, our communities are usually neglected when it comes to those kind of conversations.
Absolutely. And one final thing about the episode is we discuss her new venture, Liberation Lab, which is again about empowering Black families to solve persistent problems in their community. So it is, like you said, a perfect episode leading into Mother's Day.
Yes. And she definitely embodies all the work mothers do inside the home and inside their community, particularly. That's just how Black women have been historically and are today. And so she embodies all of that. And we're so grateful that she took the time to come chat with us and share her experiences and drop some gems. So without further ado, let's get our social entrepreneur Latoya Gayle on, and we'll catch up with y'all afterwards.
For today's episode, we welcome Latoya Gayle, a social entrepreneur with a demonstrated history of founding, leading, and scaling work in the nonprofit industry. During the episode, we discuss her work as a parent organizer in Boston, the current state of schooling in the United States, and various ways that parents can advocate for their children. We also have a conversation about her organization, March Like a Mother, as well as the mission behind her latest venture, Liberation Lab. Welcome, Latoya Gayle.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
So excited to have you. I know a lot of Latoya's work as a social entrepreneur and mom who's, organizing for the community, but also love that Latoya is an avid BHD listener. So that is awesome. Yes. But you know how we always start these. We want our audience to know a little bit more about who you are. So just tell us who you are.
Hi. So I think the identity that I lead with most of the time is I'm a Black woman and I'm a mother. I'm based here in Boston. I call myself a social entrepreneur. Lately, how I've been describing what I do is investing in my community, because when you invest in something, you have a return on that investment. And so the work I do is just investing in families within my community to build their capacities in different ways. I work in education mostly, and right now I'm actually launching a new venture to build families' capacity to be civically engaged. I'm starting here in Boston, but I hope it's something that will spread throughout the country.
That's important. And I want to hear more about your journey into being a social entrepreneur and organizer. First, tell our listeners, what is a social entrepreneur, and then tell us what motivated you to pursue this passion.
Yeah, a social entrepreneur is an entrepreneur who likes to start businesses or organizations that try to provide a common good for their community. So I've worked in nonprofit, but you can have a social entrepreneur venture that is for profit. But the goal of it is to give back and to do good, unlike just a traditional like S corp or C corp that's just about making money, is the simplest way to describe it. And I find myself doing that work because even when I don't want to, I'm like called to it. I really do feel like it's a calling, and I'm pulled back into it, and people reach out to me, and even when I don't want to, I find myself doing it.
We appreciate that. And, that is actually how I first met you as a mom and social entrepreneur trying to, really make a difference in the Boston area. And, I was able to witness that, it's not an easy path to take. And so I wanted to know if you could talk about some of the, biggest barriers to building and sustaining movements to create change.
Yeah, oh man, I think some of the biggest barriers are, especially I'm in the work that I'm doing right now is specifically in the Black community. Some of the biggest barriers are the same ones that Black people face just systemically in general. Here in Boston, it's a very segregated city. It's an old city. It's a city that doesn't think that it's racist. And so people, generationally get tired and worn down. I think that's one of the biggest barriers. I think access to social capital, meaning who you know, and the people that you have access to get things done, whether that be people who are politicians or who have positional power in some way. That's really hard for people to access. There are people in Boston, and this is not like special to Boston, who like never go to different neighborhoods, or you might go to parts of Boston and think that there's no Black people here. And Boston's actually a city that is majority people of color. There's more people of color here than white people, but you wouldn't know that if you don't go and look. And so I think another barrier is just like the inclusion, like feeling like you're included in a space. And just generationally, like feeling that like wears people down, and people feel like, well, why bother? So yeah, there's so many barriers. There's financial barriers. I mean, a lot of times, like when I started doing this work, I was just paying for it myself, and so like funding is another huge barrier. But you were going to say something, Ty. I interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah. I was going to ask about the financial part. So you can continue on with that if you have more to say.
Yeah. Funding is hard, especially when you know how the work should be done. I often describe like philanthropy as racist, is another racist system. It's people who have a lot of money and they decide what's important to them, and they decide that's what they're going to fund, and they also often want to hear like sob stories about people who need saving, and that's not how people describe themselves. That's not how I see people. And so, like, wanting to do this work in a way that is authentic to people and that is based in the strengths of people, it can be hard to find people who have funds to fund it. And when you don't want to bend um, to the stereotypes of how they see your community.
That makes me think about education more generally,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, even when it comes to individually, like applying for scholarships or applying for essays, like
Mm-hmm.
people with money want to
Mm-hmm.
feel good about themselves by
Yep.
saving, like you said, these people with,
Yep.
these sob stories or these
Mm-hmm.
struggles, and not necessarily invest in people who come from a standpoint of empowerment, which is
Right.
unfortunate, because you
Right.
feel like you have to like lay it on
Right.
just to get what you
Right.
need.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. No, you were going to say something. I was starting to talk.
No.
Right.
We want to hear your perspective. So what do you have? Yeah.
Yeah. No. It's so interesting. When I talk to parents, and I talk to parents. I've always talked to parents a lot because I want that experience and that voice to lead the work that I do. But something that I've heard is that's how they see us. That's not how we feel about ourselves. And so and I'm talking to parents across the board. And like I said, the work that I'm doing right now is specifically focused on Black families. And so I'm talking to parents. Some of them might have dropped out of high school and some of them might have their PhDs, but it's the same experience. Like, stop talking about us the way that you talk about us. Stop describing us that way. That is not who we are. We know who we are. We know that we are powerful. We know that it's a tradition in the Black community to make a way out of no way, to figure it out. That's what we do. And we're ready to do that on our terms now and not on other people's terms?
Yes. So one follow-up question that I had
Mm-hmm.
in regard to that, given that you don't want to kind of bend or lean into those stereotypical kind of portrayals in order to get what you need, like how do you
Mm-hmm.
overcome that barrier? Like how have you been able to be so successful and launch many different ventures, which we will get into. But like,
Yeah.
how do you overcome those barriers?
I think, I think to be like completely frank, people have told me that I'm a non-threatening Black woman. So, meaning for anybody that's listening who doesn't know what that means, is that I do naturally have like a happy disposition. I smile a lot, and that is naturally who I am. But I'm also gonna tell it like it is and say what I mean at the same time. So I think sometimes that lowers people's guard around me, and I think from the beginning I haven't really pretended that I am someone who I'm not, or that I'm going to do things that go against my beliefs. I think people describe me as a person of integrity, and I think so. By the time I'm talking to someone who's even thinking about funding me, they know that already. And so I think it's just like an authenticity that I've been able to lead with for whatever reason. Um, so yeah, I think it's an authenticity that I've been able to lead with. So by the time somebody's talking to me, they know like who they're talking about, who they're talking to, and what I'm going to talk about, and what I am going to do and what I ain't going to
Yeah.
do.
I think that's important. Especially when you're trying to get people to donate or support causes.
Right.
The persona is important, right? You want to give a
Absolutely.
warming and welcoming and inviting kind of vibe, so
Right.
that way people will be more likely, one, to listen to you, and then also, like any kind of, it's almost like sales, right? Any kind of sales
Yeah.
job you need that so people can listen to you is the first step, and then getting that money is usually the second step. For a good cause is usually easier to do, for sure.
Right. But then you also have the receipts too. Like I have wonderful relationships with my community. With the people in my community. So like, even if, you have some money and you want to feel good about what you're doing, I don't want to say that I'm a gatekeeper, but there are people that when the community trusts somebody, they'll listen to somebody who they trust first. Like, who are these people? What do they want? What are you trying to do? And so like, if you have the receipts and your community trusts you and values you, that also is a power on your side.
100%. I think I want to ask another follow up too, because I know we kind of lightly grazed over this point that I think is important, right? Because I think some listeners are probably wondering, or they may be even interested in trying to begin their own community work. And a lot of times people don't know where to begin. And I know you mentioned that earlier on, you had to begin by largely funding a lot of this stuff by yourself independently. Yeah. And then it grew into getting more funding opportunities, et cetera. What kind of was that process like? I know nobody really wants to spend too much money out of their pocket, but kind of maybe if you were to give someone advice on things that you learned of how to obtain funding so that they can be quicker to get, where they want to go, what would you tell them of how to secure some funding? Where should they look, or what are some strategies you used?
Right. I would network. I think that's like the generic term you hear all the time, but like treat it like it's a job, even though you're not making any money or raising any money. You have to be in places with people. So you start to build a network, which will start to build social capital. I mean, I have been lucky enough to, I would say accidentally, be in rooms with people who have lots of resources who I didn't know, and be nice to people. Just in general, like try to be a nice person, and put yourself in those places. And also, I always say, think like a mediocre white man. Don't think that like what you're trying to do. Don't think that what you're trying to do is not good enough. And so, if you see an opportunity, go for it. Whether that's funding, whether that's applying for a grant or a job, or introducing yourself to someone, just go for it. Because I'm sure whatever you're thinking about doing is wonderful. And a lot of times you just need somebody else to believe in you, honestly, to push you along. But and do the work before you're getting paid to do it, or before you're raising money to do it, like you are. You have to come from a place of love. You just got to do it. And I think any entrepreneur along the spectrum will tell you that it's just a hard road in the beginning, and you got to just do it. Yeah.
So, in thinking about that, Tyrell's question made me think about another potential barrier. And you also mentioned it as well. So, funding is one thing. And as you just mentioned, it's another, like you might get in front of, a room of people and maybe you're unsure. And so I guess what, advice would you have for people who feel like they aren't experts enough? Because, like you said, you talk to people who have, some might not have a high school diploma, but some might have a PhD. What do you need to be successful? Do you need education, or is that just kind of or do you need a certain level of education, or is that a misconception?
I think I'll look at the term education more broadly, right? You can have education without necessarily having a credential that proves that you know something. But like lived experience is an education, and trust your own lived experience. Like no one can tell you like what you know. There was a campaign here in Boston. I can't remember the name of it now. Boston. Oh man, I forgot what it's called, but it's about talking to babies when they're first born to make sure they hear a lot of words, and singing to them, and Boston Basics is what it's called. And like singing with them and all these things that kind of help build the baby's cognition. But you probably have a grandmother who sang to you and read to you and talked to you a certain way, who did all these things, right? Kind of intuitively without someone with a PhD who studied like, child development to tell them, oh, you're supposed to do this. And so we know things, even if we don't have the credential. And if there's something you think you don't know, connect with somebody who does. Trust me. And then we're lucky enough to live in the age of the internet. You can look just about anything up. But I tell people also know, like, nobody questions Mark Zuckerberg. He ain't got no degree. Nobody's questioning Bill Gates. He ain't got no degree. And there's a lot of stories like that. And so I think like we need to be able to see ourselves in that light. There are people who are brilliant, who for whatever reason haven't had the opportunity to earn a credential. But nonetheless, they are brilliant. And so I think it's about just finding a way to recognize your brilliance and not be ashamed or embarrassed if you don't have a credential. It doesn't make you less brilliant. And if you feel like you need for some, when I feel like I'm like, okay, if I'm talking to an audience and I know that they're going to respect a credential, reach out to people and y'all can tell me if I'm lying or not. But whenever I've talked to somebody with a PhD, they are so happy to share their research. They want the work that they've done to live beyond academia. Like they did this work because they want people to know about it. And so if they have some work or they can do something and help you, they want people to know that they spent 8 years of their life in school and they know how to communicate that to a certain audience if you need them to hear it. And don't be afraid to reach out to people. Reach out to a stranger. I bet you they're happy to hear from you. So, even though you might not have a formal education, you know things and you have the education of your lived experience and the things that you just know.
I love that. I love the distinction between education and credential. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I think oftentimes folks forget that no matter what level of success you have in life, no one does it alone. So, the idea and the importance of you highlighting networking and reaching out and not being afraid to do so is important. I know sometimes in America, we are forced to believe that everything happens through individualism. That we all did it alone. And like you mentioned, Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, even them, they did not do it alone, right? Everyone has helped you out the way. And so don't feel like that you're less than or you're not doing enough work when you are, putting someone up there or getting other people involved.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit more about one of your specific projects. You are a co-founder of March Like a Mother. What was the motivation and vision for this particular movement?
Oh my God. Last year was just a crazy year. And I was speaking with a friend and colleague of mine. Her name is Sarah Idrisu. She's a wonderful woman. And we were saying we want to do something. What should we do? And we were talking about our sons, and it was right after George Floyd had just been murdered. And we were like, what can we do? And we were like, he called on his mother. We should call on the power of motherhood. But we were intentional about calling in all mothers, no matter what their race, but also being intentional. But this is about the experience of Black mothers, and this is about the pain that they need and the support that Black mother experience needed. And I think our biggest motivation, I would say, is that we're moms. And we're moms to sons, and we worry about our sons, we worry about our husbands, we worry about ourselves. But we also know that, in this country where, Black people are a minority population. I'm clear. I don't like to just say we're a minority. We're a minority population that we need to be able to pull in allies and show them what does it look like to be an ally. And to be an ally, it looks like you let us lead because this is something that's impacting us, and we'll show you how to support us. So it was a very powerful moment.
I love to. Well, first of all, I know Sarah. We had overlap in time
Yeah.
with GSE, and so
Okay.
that's where
Yeah.
you speak about like the power of partnership and connecting
Yeah.
with
Absolutely.
others. She's really awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives and accomplishments that you all achieved through March Like a Mother?
Right. Well, the first thing that we say with March Like a Mother is Black Lives Matter, not just when we're gunned down in the street. Black Lives Matter all day, every day. And so the things that we focused on were the Black maternal health and the fact that Black women are dying when they're giving birth at higher rates than other women in this country. We focused on economic mobility because if you want to have access to the American dream, you have to have access to capital and economics in this country. We focused on civic engagement. How are you involved in this? And then we focused on education, of course, because me and Sarah are both involved in education. But the focus was Black Lives Matter all the time. And so we called on people here in our city who supported that idea. And all of our speakers were Black women, from our DAs from our DA to our city council president to our state reps. We had wonderful artists here. And we're centering like the partnership. Like look at this power of all these Black women. Now, I forget the actual question. I'm just caught up in talking about it now. That you asked me.
No, exactly that. We wanted to know about the initiative. So yeah, we appreciate
it. And of course, we talked about we talked about it as public safety, not just police brutality, because public safety is bigger than police brutality.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
Another question that comes to mind, especially on this topic of motherhood and what you've been doing with March Like a Mother, especially during the pandemic, and with the work you're doing, kind of how do you manage all of this? What advice would you give the other folks who are in the midst of trying to balance, parenting and doing all this other extracurricular activities and working just in general? How do you do all that?
You know what? I just read this blurb. I didn't get to read the article this week, and it said something like, women, if you want to get ahead in your career, don't ditch the kids, ditch the husband. No, sir, I'm just joking though. That's what the headline was. I didn't get to read it. But no, I think, I think women naturally we're just kind of multitaskers, right? You just make it work. You just get it done. I think don't feel guilty. Like I think sometimes as moms we feel guilty about like, oh, we didn't spend like every waking moment with our children. They don't want to spend every waking moment with us. I think like in America you had this movement for women to be able to work, but then you didn't want women to also relinquish any of the parental or household duties too, and that's just not going to work. So, your partner, whoever's in your life with you with these kids, needs to give a hand. Also, lean on your sisters, lean on your other mothers for support, and just don't feel guilty. You're doing a good job. Whatever you're doing, I'm sure you're doing a good job. And we put this guilt on ourselves when we shouldn't. And take time for yourself. Like even in this pandemic, I have like my regular Zoom calls with people. When it was warm out, we used to go out and social distance and hang out. But take time for yourself. Like you are a mother, but to be a good mother, you have to like replenish and nourish yourself as a person, because that's what your children see the example of who you are in the world. My oldest is a high school senior right now. And I'm like, oh wow, like, she was like watching me and she was, listening to some things. And so the fruit of your labor you'll see as your children grow and they have watched what you have done and what you have said to them, and you'll see them developing to their own people, and you'll see these bits of brilliance, and don't worry about it. Like the things that we're stressed out about, they're not stressed out about.
Oh, that's really good advice, and it's crazy to think that your daughter is about to
No,
graduate from high school. Wow.
she's getting old. I deny that I am.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it. So, speaking of education and the pandemic and et cetera, as you mentioned, your focus is education. That's, where a lot of your organizing work is centered. And so we really want to know your thoughts on like the current state of schooling within the context of the pandemic, and like how do we enact equity once this is all over? Because right now things aren't equitable.
No, they're not. And, and you got to always call it to their attention. Remember, they weren't when this started, too. So I think not sometimes, most of the time, school systems are eager to get back to what they were doing. And what they were doing was not good. And so thinking about this pandemic, it's so interesting. Like here, for instance, our state said, oh, we're going to make the school day longer, even while kids are remote, because we heard from parents that, there's not enough direct instruction. But I'm like, what parents did you hear from when you said that? And so I think something that all schools need to think about is, who are you talking to? Where are you getting your information from when you're asking what parents need in this moment? When you say how families are doing, how students are doing, how are they coping in this moment, and be realistic about where we were before this started, and where we need to be in general. And so and remember that it's steps, right? So we need to get back into school whenever we get back, when it's safe, right? Because no one's going to learn in a stressed out environment where they're worried about dying. But when we go back, take the time to say, okay, let's assess. And I don't mean necessarily a standardized test, but let's say, where are we? What are we starting from? And what are our goals to where we need to be? And how are we going to get there? But do it in a real authentic and intentional way, listening to the people who are the most impacted. And so, and for instance, here in Boston, in our public school system, it's over 70% Black and brown students, right? And so that's who you need to be talking to. You don't need, because that's the majority of your population. You can't say you heard from families when you didn't hear from the majority of your families, and you didn't do everything in your power to hear from them and what they need in this moment, and what they need when we go back. Like, for instance, here's an oh Lord for y'all. There's a group of white and Asian parents here who are raising money to sue the district because they're upset about the exam. We have exam schools here for high school. They're upset about them suspending the test requirements for exam schools during a pandemic. And they're going to just be using grades and our state standardized tests. They're like, no, that's not fair. We spent all this money on test prep for our kids, and we're like, and then, who cares? Like, districts need to take a stand for once for equity, right? You can't like talk the talk and say, we want to be culturally relevant. We believe in equity. We think all of our students can succeed. But then when you have a group of white parents jumping around saying that's not fair, that's who you answer to. You don't answer to the parents that you need to be answering to. And, and that's a catalyst for my work, honestly, because that's the kind of thing that continuously happens. I'll start rambling. I think the biggest thing we need to realize is that we were nowhere near where we need to be before the pandemic started. And so let's talk about that. And let's talk about where we need to be really, and how are we going to get there, whether that's funding, whether that's, educators having more, I'm going to call it more intentional, training and skill development. When I talk to teachers, sometimes they'll tell me, I was a teacher for 7 years before I learned how to teach a kid how to read. And then we wonder why children don't know how to read.
That's
We need to,
real.
education needs to be more intentional about what it does, because, education is a social determinant of health. When you block a child from the basics of a quality education, you're blocking them from accessing the American dream. Point blank, period.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that example that you gave with the white and Asian parents
Mm-hmm.
for the exam schools is just like, come on now. I mean, it seems like they're just mainly upset because their privilege is not giving them an advantage this time around.
There you go.
So they're mad
They're
about
like,
it.
whoa, wait a second. We learned the
Yeah.
game and then you change the rules.
Yep. All these advantages that we're used to having. Oh, now all of a sudden everyone's on the equal playing field. Now we're mad.
Right.
That's definitely Lord newsworthy. So I'm glad you do that segment in here. And do you have any advice for parents in terms of advocating for their children, especially those with special needs?
Oh, yeah. So I have a child who does have special needs. My oldest son is on the autism spectrum. And first of all, I want to tell those parents, give yourself a hug. What you're dealing with is very hard. Um, and my biggest advice for those parents is to talk to other parents, because often what districts do is, even if you're good at advocating for your child, they want to shut you up, right? They want to give you what you need and do what you need to do for your child. Get your child what they need. But talk to other parents, because if we're ever going to make systemic change, we all need to get together and be like, yo, why do y'all keep doing this to all of us over and over and over? And I would advise parents to learn the law. When you have an IEP, it is a legal document. Learn the law. And you might say, how do I learn that law? Again, y'all, we got the internet. We can look things up and we can talk to each other. Learn the law. Bring someone with you when you have an IEP meeting. It's an emotional experience for you as a parent, because you are literally fighting with the people who are supposed to be serving your child to make them serve your child, instead of them going in and saying, here's a menu of things that are available to your child. What would you need? What do you need? What would you like? That's not how it happens. That's how it should happen, but that's not how it happens. What happens is you got to argue with them about every little thing, and if your child really needs it. But bring someone with you who can kind of remove themselves from the emotion of it. That could be a friend. That could be a fellow parent who has done this before. There are lots of free advocates, and and depending on your income, there's also like free lawyers you can access if you need to take it to that point. But remember, like legally, when your child has a disability, you legally have additional rights and privileges. And when you have an IEP, it's a legal document, and when they don't follow it, they are in breach of contract. And it's stressful. I'm going to say it's like super stressful. So again, take some time for yourself. Your child loves you. You're doing everything in your power. And I would say sometimes, this is going to sound bad, but it's the truth. Sometimes you can't wait for school to do something. Sometimes you got to go out and get it yourself for your child. So if you have access to a good health plan and your child needs a therapy or something, talk with your doctor and see what support you can set up for your child out of school, because depending on the district you're in, they're going to do what's legally the legal minimum. And that's legally all they have to do. So there's resources for you to get that extra kick that you need for your child, and do it. And don't be, and I'm going to say this too, especially to like Black parents and parents of color, don't be embarrassed if your child needs help. Your child needs help. You want your child. I went to a special needs conference one time, and the keynote speaker was a man with disabilities. And he said, his mom always said, parents of children with special needs want the same thing that every other parent wants. They want their child to grow up and move out of their house. And so if you want to make sure your child has the tools that they need to reach whatever their potential is, you got to fight You can't be embarrassed about it. You got to lean on each other and know the rights and know the law.
So powerful. Do you have any like specific resources or websites or, even terms that might be useful for parents to Google?
Yeah, yeah. They should know like IDEA. They should know. Oh my gosh, I should have wrote these down before I came on here with you. But like, they should know IDEA. There's of course. Why is this website escaping me? But maybe I can forward it to you. You guys can just kind of post it.
Yeah.
But there's a website that will link you based on your address to like resources in your community for children with special needs, whether that's like therapies or doctors or things like that. And I always say lean on your child's pediatrician as well. Your pediatricians are like, okay, what's going on? What do you need? And and a lot of doctors' offices have social workers to help you navigate these things or to get you started and connect you with the people in your area. There's ARCs. ARCs is a term that they have nationwide for families that can really connect you, because a lot, just like with any other kid, a child with special needs doesn't come with a handbook. And so, but your village needs to look a little bit different. And so you have to really start to build your village of support around you. And that, I think, it starts at your doctor's office, and then they'll connect you. It can start, and it starts with other parents too. And they'll connect you, because I think a lot of this stuff is local. And so like in every area, they'll tell you, okay, here's where you need to go. Here's the group you need to call. Here's what you need to do. So you got to build a village around you that might look a little different than for your typically developing child.
Thank you for that. And we will
Yeah.
definitely include any resources that
Okay.
you forward to us.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on to your newest venture as a social entrepreneur, Liberation Lab. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. And so Liberation Lab came. I was up until a few months ago, I was executive director of something called Boston School Finder that helped parents navigate the enrollment system here in Boston. But the truth of the matter is that that's like not enough. Um, I recently watched this movie, American Skin. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it, with Nate Parker. And there was a line that he says in there, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure I'm not saying it exactly right, but he says, America doesn't solve its problems. It just puts a premium on a way to get around them. And Black people are in the worst position to pay that premium. And so, like, that idea is kind of like my catalyst for Liberation Lab. And so if we're truly free, that means that we can access all that America has to offer, right? The idea of being a liberated people. But also, we have to be civically engaged. And so thinking of the family as the unit of change. And in education, a lot of times they talk about the whole child, but I'm trying to expand that idea to the whole family and then connect it to the whole community. What would it look like if we are investing in families' capacity to be civically engaged and use that to advocate for education? And those skills can translate to any other thing that they need to as well. I kind of look at it like a continuation of like maybe what a Stacey Abrams or Latasha Brown does. They get people to vote, but this is about, you voted, now what? How do you hold someone accountable so they know that once they're in office or they're in any position that they can be taken out of, that they are accountable to you? And so that looks like network building. It looks like organizing. It looks like leadership development for families, and really thinking of the Black family, because I'm being very intentional and specific with Liberation Lab as the unit of change for the Black community. I'm really excited. I also, part of what I want to do with Liberation Lab too is, I call it building a social justice social network. And so, I've mentioned people go online to get information lots of times, but unfortunately, that information is not vetted, is not correct, is not useful to you. And so what we're going to do is build our own resources and our own social network around connecting Black families, people who want to be allied with Black families, to give them the information, the resources, to connect them with the skills and the tools so they can be engaged in our democracy here. Here, starting in Boston, and then I believe with all my heart that it's something that you could do this in any city in the country.
Yeah, no, I think this is super, super important.
Mm-hmm.
Daph and I have had tons of conversations, even on this platform, about how even just generally as Black folks, we push, we vote, we get somebody in office, and then we kind of take our foot off the pedal.
Right.
And then the other opposition is working hard to make sure we go backwards. Right. And we've seen this time and time again. And so I appreciate you setting up this space for us to continue to move forward even after we vote. Right. Like you said, it's like that what's next. And a lot of times folks just don't know what to do outside of voting. That's what we're just told to do all the time. Vote, vote, vote. Right. But there's much more to that we have to keep pushing forward. And the main thing, like you said, just holding folks accountable that we vote for in office. And I think this is an important conversation we had now because this is where we are, a lot of us politically, right? Black folks saved this country. And then, for some reason we, want to make sure we see what we want to see happen down the line. So I really appreciate that.
Right, absolutely.
This has been a great conversation. And all times for our guests, we've covered a lot. There may be things that we didn't cover that you would like to address or say before we close out.
Oh man, I talk too much, but
no, you don't. What you say is profound.
Oh, thank you. I think I don't know if I don't have an area that I necessarily want to cover, but I think how about this? The work that I'm about to do is not looking at education in a vacuum. We can't, if we really want to have systemic change, remember, like it's a system. And so there are many, many pieces that influence things. And so education is important, but there are other social determinants of health are important too. It's important that our communities are safe. It's important that our communities are healthy. It's important that we have access to economic opportunities. And it's important that we work together and we talk to each other and we're not competing with each other, but we are collaborating with each other because there is enough space and room and unfortunately problems for us all to tackle. And so I just want us as Black people to know that and to do that and live that way and don't take on the characteristics of white supremacy culture that we all have been born and raised into, where we get to think it's about us. It's not about us individually, it's about us collectively. And if we ever want to realize those dreams, we have to think of the collective us. So then we can maybe we can think individualistically after that, but we need to provide an opportunity for us to collectively create the opportunities that we need as a people.
I think that's so important. I think in our current space, people, kind of want to blow up. And I think that often kind of lends to like this competition, it has to center me, be about me. But what you said, I think is really important. We have to think collectively now because child, it's too many problems for it to just be, this individualistic, competitive thing. We need all the resources and all the people. So.
Right. Absolutely. And listen to Black and Highly Dangerous every week.
Yes. They also need to listen to you and follow you. Where can they do that? Where can they learn more about you and your work?
All right. You can email me at latoya@latoyagayle.com. But I'm also standing up a website for Liberation Lab at liberationlab.org. And you can follow me on social media. My Twitter handle is @NoSheDidn't, KNOW. I thought it was cute at the time. Yeah, you can follow me there. But yeah, and so I hope people reach out to me. I would love to connect with people. Like I said, this is about the collective us. It's not about me. And so let's do this together.
100%. And also for those of you listeners who have some money that's sitting around, you want to donate and fund, that's also a good avenue to do something good.
Yes, what Ty said.
I'm sure she will put it to good use, and you can trust her. So to make that happen too. So we definitely appreciate you, Latoya, for coming in, chatting with BHD, and also just your continuous support of our platform. And we just support all that you do. That's why we had to bring you on and shed light and hopefully garnish more support, and just appreciate you. So thank you for taking the time to come chat with us, and we'll definitely be in touch.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Yo, Dad, so what do you think about Latoya Gayle coming to talk to us today about her work in social entrepreneurship?
I am so fired up. I really appreciate the work that she's doing. And, when people think about entrepreneurship, I don't think they necessarily think about ways that they can invest in the community. They think about entrepreneurship as a potential personal investment in building up their own capital. But pursuing social entrepreneurship to invest in the community and build up community capital, I think that is awesome. And, I think is a great thing to do.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. And I think this is, one thing, as BHD has begun to grow, and I think it's something we've always done, but we're being more conscious of now, of having the balance of folks, either in academia versus folks in the community, organizing and making things happen. I really appreciate that, because I think it gives our listeners and ourselves this kind of holistic perspective of progress and the folks doing the work in various different spaces, and how a lot of this stuff aligns to on overlaps with a lot of these different spaces too, and professions. And so hearing someone like Latoya come on and talk about all the wonderful work she's been doing and advocating for and pushing and raising money for, that takes a lot of work. Mm-hmm. But this is what actually creates change in our community. That tangible change changes the lives of the neighbors, the family, the kids, and the schools. And so this is, that kind of stuff that's very, very important. I'm so really happy that she's doing this. Just bottom line, just really happy she's doing this.
Mm-hmm. And the answer about education, where she dropped the fire line about, the difference between, education and a credential, she did highlight, the role that researchers and academics actually can play in the movement. Like maybe you as an academic or researcher, you might not have time to, do all of the work on the ground, but that doesn't mean you can't work with and inform the work that's happening on the ground. And, for our academic listeners, activists might not have access to JSTOR or all of these major databases. However, maybe your role is just translating, writing some literature reviews or whatever it is that can help speak to an audience that might look for those academic credentials or might look for the research to back up what activists with different educational backgrounds might be saying.
Oh, 100%. I think at a bare minimum, academics can participate in that way. This is what we do anyway. We go around, we research, we write, we present findings or how this relates to certain topics. And I think that's a good point. Going in and helping, offering your services, being, hey, listen, if you need either some sources or if you just need somebody to come talk to a particular audience, right? And lay it out for them of why this is important or why what you're doing needs this kind of support. We do that all the time. So I feel like, this should be easy for academics to participate in if it's within the realm of your research or what you study, 100%. And then I think too, like what Latoya was mentioning in the beginning is just doing the work and all the different barriers that are faced and thinking about how we can make those barriers less challenging, right? Whether it's just donating time or donating money or connecting people, right? Networking, just trying to keep folks like Latoya in the back of our minds as we're meeting new people or doing or going on to new ventures and being like, okay, how can maybe I pull them in or give them some resources to make sure that, they're getting more resources to do what they're trying to do forward. I think that's important too. And I'm glad she spent some time earlier on talking about that and getting into that more.
Yes. I would say the last thing that kind of stood out to me as really important was her discussion around balancing things and taking time for yourself and not feeling guilty. There's a lot going on, and, most of us are doing our absolute best. And if we continue to do that best, but also give ourselves grace when it comes to, whether it's spending time with the kids or grace related to the work. I think it is really important that we just, give ourselves a pat on the back,
Yeah, for sure. Give yourself a pat on the back. Self-care is always important. And don't make yourself feel guilty for those of you who have even just family in general, spouses. Sometimes you're busy doing work, or just children as well. Just, being able to realize that, you're a mom or you're a spouse, but that's not all you are. And there are things that you're interested in too, that you want to keep moving forward in life and goals you want to hit. And sometimes those things require some time. Your kids will be okay, because I'm sure you're going to figure out a way to balance it, but try not to feel guilty about it. I really appreciated that advice too. So all in all, great conversation. Really happy Latoya came to chat with us. And definitely for you, if those people in the community, those white people, those Asian people who are upset about what the exam schools are doing, y'all need to go ahead and get over that. If you're listening, I'm sure you're probably not listening to this podcast, but if you were, you'll be okay. Your kids will be just fine. As you will see, it's not that big of a deal. It's shocking how these folks still be upset about these silly things like that. But if anything, make sure you all click on the links attached to this episode description, whether it be for resources, whether it be for connecting with Latoya and her social media and websites and all that kind of stuff. Please reach out to her. After you do that, reach out to us. You can follow us on social media at BHD Podcast. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can visit our website, blackandhighlydangerous.com, the key will for our latest content. Email us if you have ideas, questions, guest ideas, whatever it is. Email us, bhdpodcast@gmail.com. Then after you do all that, please go and review and rate us on iTunes. That helps us out with the algorithm so that more people will find us coming up on their search boxes, etc. And then share us with your friends, share us with your family, share us with your enemies. And as always, continue to be the oppressor's worst fear.
If you're interested in continuing this and other conversations, visit our website, blackandhighlydangerous.com, to subscribe to our email list, suggest topics, and participate in our discussion forums.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at BHD Podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe and rate our podcast on your favorite platform. And as always, continue to be the oppressor's worst fear.